Janome.
So let's go ahead and prep our outside pocket. This is optional, so you can skip this step if you would like to. If you are using fabric, you do have enough in your yardage to make the pocket. If you are using cork, you would need an additional piece of cork and you'll need a scrap of fabric. So let's start with the fabric option first. This is 12 inches long by 7 inches wide, and it's already interfaced. So you're gonna fold this in half, just like so, and you're gonna stitch down here along this edge. That's gonna be your bottom edge. You're gonna use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure that you back stitch when you start and stop. Then you're gonna take it to the ironing board. You'll turn it right side out and you'll give it a really good press. And then you're gonna top stitch this top edge, this folded edge right here. You can do an 1/8, a 1/4, a double stitch, whatever you would like. And your sides right here are going to stay open. Those raw edges will be hidden by the handles at a later step, so you don't have to worry about finishing those. For the cork option, I have a piece of cork that is 7 inches wide by 6.5 high and a piece of fabric in the same size. The fabric does not have any interfacing to eliminate bulk. Now for the fabric, we folded it in half, but with the cork, we don't want it to get too thick, especially if you were putting this cork pocket on top of a cork outside and cork handles. We don't want it to be too much for your machine. So to eliminate some of the bulk, you're going to add this fabric as the back piece. So you're just going to put these right sides together. So I have my cork and fabric right sides together. It doesn't really matter with this batik. And you're going to sew on the top and bottom edge. These are your 7-inch wide edges. So make sure that you check your measurements before you do your sewing. And you're going to leave the edges here open. Those will be hidden by your handles. So after you get done sewing, you're going to do the same thing, turn it right side out, press it, and top stitch. And I just pick one edge to be the top. The bottom edge is going to get sewn to the bag, so you don't need to top stitch it. And here's a tip for you. You're going to turn your piece completely over, and you're going to stitch with the cork on top. The reason is it's going to prevent the fabric from stretching. So when I sew the top and the bottom edge, my fabric is not going to stretch. If I do it this way, chances are this piece of fabric is going to scoot and stretch on me, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to get both of these prepared and top stitched, and then we'll be ready to add them to the bag. I have my handle here. It is all fused with interfacing, and now it's time to press it so that I can get it ready for top stitching. So what I'm going to do is turn it over with the interfacing side up and fold it in half so that it's wrong sides together. And I'm just going to work my way down. For this step, I'm going to turn the steam on my iron off because I don't want to burn my fingers. So I'm just going to work all the way down, folding this in half all the way down the 42-inch long handle. Keep moving as I go and keep ironing so I get a nice crease in the center. And I'm ironing all the way down to the end, even on the ends where there's no interfacing. We're going to include that in this. And then once I get that, I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold each side into this crease. So I'm going to fold that in like so and work my way down. And then I'm going to come back and fold this other one in as well. I have my blind hem foot, my G foot already on. I have a full bobbin. My machine is all threaded. So I'm going to come right over here and I'm going to select stitch number 4. And that's going to move my needle position to 0.05. I can go all the way over and make that 0 if I want to, but I'm gonna leave it at 0.05. I like how that looks. This is gonna be for my 1/8 inch. So when it comes to my stitch length, 2.4 is a standard, but for me, for top stitching, I always like to go up, and I'm gonna go up to 3.5. So I've got my settings all ready to go. I'm on my Janome 15,000. So for you, you might not have all of these stitches depending on what machine you're using. Just move your needle position as far left as you can, move your stitch length up, and now you are ready to sew. And when I move my foot down, or excuse me, my needle down, you'll see that my needle is now to the left of the flange. There's my flange right here. So now I can take my handle, which is all pressed and ready to go. This is my open side. I like to start on this side because it takes a little bit more concentration. I'm going to line that right up there, and I'm going to top stitch on this side as well as this side 1/8 of an inch. Then I'm going to flip that over to my 1/4 inch foot, and I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch and another 1/4 of an inch. My 1/8 inch is all done on my handles, so I'm going to take this foot off and I'm going to use my O foot, which is my 1/4 of an inch with a flange. Click that on. Be careful, my needle position is in the wrong spot and I don't want to break anything. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to scroll down to page 11 to my quilting stitches, click on 1/4 of an inch. Down here, it's at 8.3, so I'm going to move mine over to 9. I like a little bit tighter 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to increase my stitch length again to 3.5. I'm good to go and ready. Now I'm ready to do my other side of my handles with my 1/4 of an inch. So I finished up both of my fabric handles. I've top stitched 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch from each edge. That is completely optional. If you just want to do the 1/8 inch, that is fine. One thing to note, you technically only have to stitch this side, which would be the open side. And I've seen a lot of bag makers just stitch here so that it's closed and not do the other side. That's totally up to you. I've just always done it this way. I find that it looks neater and more professional when I do everything on the left on the right. I just like to mimic both sides. I find that it matches better. So you are going to finish your fabric handles however you would like. If you want to do some decorative stitches, you can do that as well. I just did the double line. Again, remember I have shorted my interfacing down here on the ends, but I also folded and stitched those sides as well. That is going to be for the finishing steps to make sure that I reduce some of the bulk. So I have my nice long handle here. I have one for the front and I have another one for the back. When it comes to cork, that's going to be a little bit different though. For your cork handles, you're going to be cutting them 2 inches instead of 4 like we did for the fabric, and they're not interfaced. And what you're going to do is you actually have 4 strips, so you're going to be sewing 2 sets of 2. I just went ahead and sewed these together using a 1/4 of an inch seam. For my stitch length, I use about a 2.8 to 3. I don't want to go all the way up to 3.5 like I would for top stitching, but I also don't want to go too small and perforate my cork. So I just find that a little bit larger than my normal length is fine. And what I'm going to do is take this to the ironing board and I'm going to press my seam. But before I do, I use my scissors to cut in the middle, and I'm going to make a little slit like I did here and cut as close to these stitches as I can without cutting through them, and I'm going to press it like this. If I split my seam, when I fold this in half to top stitch, I get a lot less bulk. So I've already done this one right here. I just cut right in the center and I pressed it, and then I used my pressing clapper on top. I held it down to flatten that out so it's really flat. So now I can take this to my machine and I'm just gonna fold this in half. When you fold your fabric, you end up with 4 layers of fabric and 4 layers of interfacing. But with cork being thicker, we don't want to do 4 layers, we just want to do 2. So that's why your fabric handle is 4 inches wide and this is only 2 inches wide. So we're just going to fold it in half, and you see that when you do that, your seams nest together and you get a lot less bulk. And I'm just going to start down on one end, fold it in half, and do my top stitching. So I always do the open side first. I'll do my 1/8 and 1/4 and my 1/8 and 1/4 on the opposite side. If I need to, I can grab my clips and hold these edges together. It's totally up to you how you want to do that. I don't usually hold or use the clips. I just usually hold it with my fingers, but it's up to you. If this feels better, go ahead and do that. So once I have that all top stitched, then my handles will be all done and they'll be ready to be added to the bag. But before I do that, if I want, that is going to be when I would decide to use Fabric Fusion. And what Fabric Fusion is, it's completely optional, but it is a glue that acts as a sealant. So once my handles are done, if I don't like the fact that I have this raw edge here and I want to finish it and seal it to make sure that none of my little pieces of fabric fray, because remember, the cork doesn't fray, it can be the fabric backing that will. So to keep it neat and pretty and looking good in the long term, I can use some of the Fabric Fusion. So I just squeeze out a small amount and I use my fingers. Some people use a pin or a paintbrush, and I just rub it along that raw edge, set it aside and let it dry for a couple of hours, and then you're ready to go. You do not have to do this step. It's completely optional. You can also add edge paint if you would like. It just depends on how much you want to get into this bag. There's so many levels of bag making and you have to decide what's best for you. For my samples, when it's something that I'm not going to be using or that's just going to be for demo, I usually don't add the Fabric Fusion. If it's a purse for myself or if it's a gift for somebody, I will use this to seal the edges. I just find that it's neater and it holds up a lot longer. So I'm going to take all of my handles here over to the sewing machine and do my top stitching. So my cork handles are all done. Just wanted to show you a comparison between the fabric here. They're both top stitched the same way. I have my double stitching on both of them. They're both 1 inch wide. This was folded in half, so it only is 2 folds. This was folded 4 times, so it's 4 layers of fabric and interfacing.